So I've been talking a lot lately about the nonsense surrounding the Palworld Nintendo lawsuit, where Palworld is getting sued by Nintendo for allegedly breaching a bunch of patents that Nintendo either did not have at the time that Palworld released, or that Nintendo should not be allowed to have because there's prior art that is well outside the statutory limitations of them being able to file those patents to begin with. And with that, I've been getting a lot of people discussing like their different thoughts in my comments about how we can possibly, or not we, but they can have a loophole that would allow them to get around some of these patent issues. And some of them are good, some of them are from a misunderstanding of the patent, which is most likely my fault from not explaining it properly or just not communicating clearly the specifics of the patent. But some of them are good, some of them are bad, and I wanted to discuss a few of them and whether or not they would actually work, whether or not they wouldn't work, or whether or not they're just a really cool idea. So the biggest one, there's two main patent categories, or two main patents, basically, three really, that have been front and center with this discussion. The patent surrounding the capturing of PALs using a capture device, such as a PAL sphere or the equivalent Pokeball. The Nintendo is effectively saying that the PAL sphere is like the Pokeball, and you're throwing a capture object in 3D space. A lot of the comments that I've gotten about that, like I tried to pull up a few different examples of these comments that I'm getting to discuss them, but a lot of times, a lot of people are having kind of a similar idea. One of the first ideas that people had was, why don't they just make the spheres into triangles or sticks? The reason that that does not work with the way that the patent is written is because the patent does not refer to a sphere or a ball, which would be a little bit more justifiable than what it does do, because what the patent just says is a capture object. So literally anything that can be used to capture someone, or capture an animal, or capture a creature, would be in breach of that patent. It's so general as to cover that option. What are the other ones? That's kind of on the same line. The thing is, why not change it from them throwing the sphere to crushing the sphere, slamming it down, and the smoke bomb-like effect happens, and a PAL appears from the smoke? They kind of did that, but instead, they don't use a sphere. They still throw the sphere to capture, but when they're releasing the PAL, it just appears right behind them. I do really like the idea, though, of adding that extra flourish. One, because it would be cool, and two, just because it would almost be like a little bit of a screw you to Nintendo of, fine, you don't like the way that we did it, we're gonna make it that much more majestic and showy. But ultimately, they did kind of implement that with their recent updates to try to play nice while they're still litigating with Nintendo. Then, one of my favorite ones, because we also discussed this in my video on just a bunch of the crazy patents that different game companies have around game mechanics, where there is a patent that exists effectively for any object that is thrown and has an effect on a character. Which means anything. Anything. If you throw a rock in a game and it has an effect on the enemy, that is patented. Nintendo owns that patent. It's insane. But one of the ones I really love this one, just this comment, just because of and to clarify, I'm not trying to insult anyone that's made these comments. A lot of the miscommunication is on my part. Why, like, I did not communicate well enough what these patents are saying to make it clear why these things wouldn't work. But I love this one just because of the response from Mighty Pancake. Capture grenades. That is all that needs to be said. And then Trixie Trickster responds, tossing a grenade usually has quite the effect. I love it. I love it. But yes, unfortunately, that one would also not work because of the fact that it is just any capture object that is caused to be launched, that the player character is caused to launch in the aiming direction. That is the very broad patent, so unfortunately, that does not work. But then, we also have this one that is about the capturing mechanics in 3D space. Have we ever got a game with a net gun? Yes, there are games with net guns. But unfortunately, the verbiage that would be described with how a net gun is used is launching the net. So I think it falls within that same category. But then we have this one, this series, that I think would actually work and thematically would fit Palworld so well that I think people would love this as a solution to begin with. And there's a series of these. What I would love them to do, because this is by Miles Corley, what I would love them to do, and countless other people, what I would love them to do because of this lawsuit is to make a completely new way to summon pals in this game. For example, they can create a pal gun to shoot out pals wherever they want. They can even add the ability to shoot other pals with the pal gun as a sort of surprise attack. I responded to that with something along the lines of that might be considered launching, but I don't think it would be. It really depends on how you legally define the term launching. And then he responded, if the gun doesn't launch them, it just adds a target on the ground for aiming and then just teleports them there instantly. I think that would work. I think that would work 100%, but let's go on to some of the follow-ups. New mechanic to capture monsters. Use bullets with nanomachines inside that digitalize I think the digitize would be the correct word. The captured monster have different tiers of bullets that have more advanced nanomachines inside to have better digitalization chances. To summon, again, use the nanomachine from a tablet-like device or whatever super tech device to rebuild the monster in the world, and you could probably shoot it. What about putting your ball inside of a special bullet? And or your pal inside of a special bullet, and whenever you want to summon your pal, you aim your pal and summon it wherever the shot lands. It also fits with the spirit of the game. Exactly. I think people would love that. Shots could be slow with low range and a lot of fall to make it feel more like throwing a sphere. I doubt Nintendo patented PAL guns. I would not be surprised if Nintendo has a patent for gun. I would not be surprised if Nintendo has a patent for gun. But nonetheless, I really love this one. Here's another one by Virtues of Sin. Here's some easy fixes that could help eliminate more of this, most likely to succeed completely BS copyright cases. Instead of PAL spheres, you have PAL ammo, which is basically PAL spheres, but bullets instead of balls. The copyright is about throwing objects. It's about launching, which is, I think, different because throwing specifically implies with hand. Launching could also apply, and I'm going to get into that in a second, could apply to other forms of release at the creature to capture them. So shooting them with a capture bullet would be different. Make it so you need a scope upgrade in order to see the capture rate, so it's not part of the base mechanics. I love that. I do love that. I actually really like that. Instead of releasing pals from spheres to battle, you register your combat spheres on your PAL recorder, which you can use to summon the pals from inside it. So instead of throwing them out from this PAL sphere, you beam them out from your device, though you might be stepping on Digimon's shoes. Or make it with the gun. Make it like the other guy said, by using a gun to, like, laze the area like you're calling in an airstrike. That, oh my god! Palworld, please, I just thought of this now. Do that. Do it so that you launch your PAL in a specific location, but it's an airstrike. And you can make it either a plane that's flying overhead, or you can make it like another large PAL that's flying overhead and dropping the PAL on the area like an airstrike, and you can laze the area. Maybe baseline, you have to summon it right next to you, but you can upgrade to tactical PAL airstrike. I love that. Oh god, I love that. That's amazing. I love that. Okay, that's an idea. Palworld, do it. Get on it. Or modders, please, make that happen. That would be awesome. Honestly, at the end of the day, Nintendo and Game Freak are all around just you freaking scum right now. Kind of glad they're chasing everyone away with Switch 2 prices. Gives me even more reason to opt out of this generation. Edit posted this before watching the video or reading the update. I find it funny. One of my suggestions was something they already thought of, LOL. I also love that too because I love, just as a side tangent, I love when I get comments and I can tell at what point in the video the person was when they left the comment because they're responding to something and questioning something that I said, but I clarify it later. So I can tell they're somewhere between this spot and this spot. I think I always love that. And I appreciate when they come back and do an edit I appreciate even more when they come back and do a follow-up comment because that's extra engagement that says, oh, I got to this point and blah, blah, blah. Now I get it. But I do appreciate that. So on the level of, obviously the changing it to a stick or a triangle or any other shape isn't going to work because of the very broad wording of the patent, which is the player character is caused to launch. So throwing could be considered launching. It doesn't matter what the object is. But I think I think the gun one might work based on the way that the legal definition of launch is determined to be. Because at the very least, military side and colloquially, there is a difference between launch and fire. You fire a cannon, you fire a gun, you launch a missile. And the difference is essentially in the trajectory, really. The difference is, which is why one of the things I think if they gave it a drop off, a significant drop off, that would require you to launch at a higher trajectory, a higher arc in order to get it where you wanted, that might not count. That might still be considered launching. But if it's fired straight, that is not launching. That is firing. Obviously, I want Palworld to win this lawsuit, but then just as a kind of FU to Nintendo, I want them to win this lawsuit, reintroduce the throwing mechanic to launch PALs, but then introduce the gun mechanic anyways. Because I want them to reintroduce the throwing mechanic as maybe an option that you can choose, just because as a way of saying, we won this lawsuit, screw you, we're going to do this anyways, but also, this is a much cooler idea. One of the other sets of discussion that have been around this, I had like the two major patents I've talked about were the capture object ones and the release of PALs ones, and then the flying ones, the ones about flying PALs and gliding PALs and stuff like that. And there weren't really a lot of loopholes discussed in the flying ones, just more so Nintendo should not be allowed to have this because this has existed in video games for an incredibly long time and has existed in mythology for even longer. One of the comments I got, though, about how Palworld or Pocket Pair could essentially get around this lawsuit is by Demi Havoc 420. Palworld's company should move to a different country. One where Nintendo, who is known to have Yakuza ties, don't know if that's true, and has been known to have government influence. Probably true, but I can't categorically say that's true. Can't change. I mean, it's probably true in the way that every single company that is powerful has some level of government influence because of lobbying. Can't just change the rules mid-game to take advantage of smaller companies. How embarrassing, Nintendo. How anyone could support this after BS how could anyone support this company after BS like this? I get where they're coming from. The lawsuit is in Japan. But they also do have patents in the United States. So if they move to the United States, it wouldn't work. I think if they move to the EU, it would be a little bit more beneficial to them. But one, a company should not have to pick up and move where they live, where the employees' families are, where they are culturally tied to, where is considered home to them, to get away with this, to not get away with this, but to be able to conduct business in a way that should be considered fair. But also, it doesn't really work because of kind of the nature of geopolitics and international commerce and stuff. One, if they move to the United States and Japan has a few patents in the United States, I think like 3 patents in the United States that are directly targeting Palworld right now. They would just file the lawsuit in the United States. 2, one of their big markets is still Japan. Just because of the company not being homed there, not being based there, even if they move where they're based, Japan could still file injunctions and file lawsuits against them so that they would not be able to sell in Japan and they would lose those sales. So even if they couldn't file the lawsuits in the United States or the EU or anywhere else, they would still potentially be sued in Japan. And because of the way international commerce works, like countries tend to support and allow those international lawsuits to happen. And in general, companies just try to abide by those international laws to an extent because of the fact that they want to be able to trade in those areas. They don't want injunctions filed against them in those areas. They don't want to be stopped from doing commerce in those areas. It's the reason why the EU, which has some of the best consumer protection laws from my understanding, can exhibit so much power to these international companies. It's why they can tell Apple what to do and get Apple to stop doing BS and get all these other companies to stop pooling BS, is because these companies don't want to lose access to that market. They don't want to have the EU say, you know what, you're just not allowed to sell here anymore because you're not abiding by our laws. And especially, it's less so in digital markets, this part that I'm coming up with, it's less so in digital markets than it is with physical markets because of the nature of the beast of manufacturing. But with Apple, like, it's not worth it for them to produce EU-specific EU regulations following products that they only sell to the EU, and have to add an as completely separate manufacturing facility or manufacturing step to be in compliance with EU laws and regulations, just so that they can continue to not follow those laws and regulations in other countries. So when you have countries that it doesn't quite work that way, just because of the international commerce factor of it, and the fact that they would still be allowed to file those lawsuits in other countries to an extent, and they would not be able to market in the countries where the patents exist, and blah blah blah. Another one are a bunch of this isn't necessarily loopholes, but I like it. I like where people are going with it, because these are a lot of the screw you Nintendo ones. Bananas 94. Who's up to patent every game mechanic and make them free for use to everyone except Nintendo? Basically, just like how all rhythm patterns are patented, so no one else can patent rhythm except Nintendo. We can patent stuff like using some power-up, use of equipment, health, stamina, MP, red-green hats, use of sounds, walk, sprint, jump, free running carts, handheld console, docking system, removing background from camera, split screen, screen share, What? Oh, the number 2. Just the number 2. Switch, the word switch, throwing barrels, shooting, painting, and so on. Oh, let's not forget low-effort quality games that often have fun gameplay mechanics, so why not patent game as well? Edit. Oh, and let's not forget creatures, or things based on real life. Also, someone needs to attack Nintendo back. Someone out there with a game that predates Pokemon needs to file a patent for the process of battling creatures against one another in the style of having 4 skills and the ability to use items, escape, and swap creatures. I know Pokemon didn't do this first. Nintendo is being a nice lady and needs to be taught a lesson. Maybe after Nintendo is no longer able to release Pokemon games due to a patent that prevents them from doing so, they'll understand what they're doing to other companies is wrong. They understand what they're doing to other companies is wrong. They just don't care. How funny it would be if every game maker ever patented everything and allowed free use to everyone except Nintendo. Then everyone sue the heck out of Nintendo for everything. I get where you're going with. If we lived in a perfect world, If we lived in a perfect world where I can see that going well, we also wouldn't need to do that. I do think it's funny if, like, every other game developer got together and said, hey, screw these guys. Let's really push their crap in with this and just patent everything and make them not be able to produce a game anymore. 2 things. 1, as I talked about in like other videos, none of these patents, from my understanding of patent law and from my understanding of the concept of prior art, should be allowed to exist in the first place. So other companies being able to patent them shouldn't be allowed to happen. 2, even if they were allowed to do that, I would not trust them, the companies that end up patenting all these things, to not end up also doing something shady. Unfortunately. Like, if I knew all the companies doing it were going to be good guys and somehow they found a way to legally do it, or just do the same sort of shady stuff that Nintendo's doing to do it, and I knew they weren't going to screw over indie developers and stuff, then absolutely, yeah, just get a taste for your own medicine, guys. That's just like the definition of karma. On that kind of note, I found more information, someone commented it, and I finally saw the comments like a month old about the specifics of Japanese patent law to explain why this shouldn't have been able to be done in the first place. This is from the Japanese Patent Act that was originally published in 1959, was updated last in 2009, I think. But Article 29, a person that invents an invention with industrial applicability may obtain a patent for that invention unless the invention is as follows: an invention that is public knowledge within Japan or in a foreign country prior to the filing of the patent application, an invention that is, which a lot of these ones, as we discussed in the other video, are, they have existed for decades. An invention that's publicly known to be worked within Japan or in a foreign country prior to the filing of the patent application, which a lot of them are. An invention that is described in a distributed publication or made available for public use over telecommunication lines within Japan or in a foreign country prior to the filing of the patent application, which a lot of them are. And then 2, a person may not obtain a patent if prior to the filing of the patent, a person of ordinary skill in the art of the invention would have been easily able to make that invention based on an invention prescribed in one of the items of the preceding paragraph, notwithstanding the preceding paragraph. So, if someone would have been able to easily make that it's not a patentable thing. You basically you can't patent something that someone of an ordinary amount of skill in that specific art would be able to do easily. Which a lot of these are throwing a sphere or throwing a capture object to do a random chance of capturing a character or capturing an NPC. That's not really a hard concept for a game designer by any means. So yeah, that not hard. And with that, this isn't even a loophole, but this is the legal way that they can kind of beat this even better. Is the Article 123 of the same Patent Act is the trial for patent invalidation. If a patent falls under any of the following items, a request for trial for patent invalidation may be filed. If the request involves two or more claims, it may be filed on a claim-by-claim basis. And just to summarize it, it is effectively if the patent violates Article 25, 29, 29 Tac 2, 32, or 38, or Article 39, paragraphs 1 through 4 of the Patent Act, you can file a trial to have the patent invalidated. So that's one of the legal processes, and I imagine that might be what Palworld is in Pocket Pair is doing right now, is trying to invalidate their patents. That would make sense to me. I don't know. Obviously, things are being kind of kept hush-hush because that's what happens when you have these big lawsuits going on. Nobody wants to say anything publicly, and there might be like a gag order or something stopping them from saying things publicly. I don't know. But here's what I love. Here's the one that I really, really hope happens, because this is the one that would really screw Nintendo over. Someone commented, Lily, a bunch of characters commented, I read Japanese patent law, and apparently if the courts find that a company is using the law to maliciously hold on to a monopoly, then regardless of the patent, then the company could lose a lot, including the rights to the franchise or game they are fighting over, and that game or franchise would be sent to public domain. So if Nintendo loses, which I hope they do, this might actually screw them over. And I saw this, and they just said they read Japanese patent law, so I was like, okay, how valid is this? So I went ahead and I looked it up. And mind the fact that this website looks kind of like this sort of website that would be made for a kindergarten class. This is the actual Japanese Fair Trade Commission website, and they have a section on any conducts to monopolize the market are prohibited. Unfortunately, like, reading Japanese law is very hard, especially because they don't do any direct translations, so all the translations that into English are not official. But this is their official website, translated into English, so it's giving the brief statement, it's not giving the actual verbatim part of the law, but according to their website, any conducts to monopolize the market are prohibited. The monopolistic or oligopolistic market under the control of only a few enterprises makes it difficult for competition to function effectively. The Anti-Monopoly Act, which if you want to look up more about this, look up the Japanese Anti-Monopoly Act, applies various regulations to conducts intended to monopolize the market and maintain oligopolistic situations by undue means. Prohibition of private monopolization. If any enterprises try to exclude competitors from the market individually or by combination with other enterprises by means of unjust low price sales, discriminatory prices, etc., or monopolize the market by obstructing business activities of new entrants, such conducts which filing incredibly tortious lawsuits against a company for false patent infringement, or the patent exists, but patent's unjust, kind of is obstructing business activities of new entrants. Such conducts are prohibited as private monopolization exclusion type. Moreover, if any dominant enterprises try to control the market by restraining business activities, or other enterprises through the acquisition of stock, dispatch of officers, such conducts are also prohibited as private monopolization control type. Measures against monopolistic situations. If competition fails to function effectively in a certain industry with a monopolistic situation because some dominant enterprise, which Nintendo definitely is, engages in large-scale operations, the JFTC may regard such a case as a monopolistic situation and take measures to restore competition. In such a case, the JFTC may request such an enterprise to transfer a part of their business operations as necessary. Any conducts likely to impede fair competition in a market are prohibited. In order to revitalize the market, it is necessary for enterprises to engage in fair competition in an effort to offer products which are better in quality and lower in price than those of their competitors. For this purpose, the Anti-Monopoly Act designates the conducts restraining free competition and undermining the foundation for competition as unfair trade practices and prohibits such conduct. Unfair trade practices consist of general designation applicable to the entire category of business and special designation applicable only to specific categories of business. Specific categories are as follows: newspapers, distributions of goods, and large-scale retailer. So that the special categories doesn't necessarily fall for this, but the other ones do. That is the basic overview. I will link both this website and I will link the actual like more specific website that or the more specific like area where it breaks down the actual written law more. I did not want to bore you with that. I did not want to break my brain trying to fully interpret all of it. But effectively, these things that they are doing, if Japanese court so decides for it to be the case, seem like they can be, to my mind, determined as monopolistic. They are attempting to stifle competition by unfair, unjust, and potentially illegal trade practices, and that could result in the divestiture, the loss or the loss of part of their company, and that would be the biggest piece of karma that Nintendo can get for all this. And I really kind of hope that it happens. But that's my update on the Palworld loopholes, the Palworld patent lawsuit. Palworld patent lawsuit loopholes. As you may be aware, I want to have a whole bunch of other videos on this topic if you want to check those out. And as well, I am currently running a petition for a change.org petition for stop the abusive misuse of patent law by video game developers. It's taking off a little bit. It's slowed down a little bit. I also haven't pushed out a video for it in a little bit. I did recently get word back from the Electronic Frontier Foundation that it's more of a perfunctory letter, but basically I had messaged them saying, hey, I would love to, this petition's taking off. I would love to get you involved. Please, like, if you are willing to get involved, just at least with helping out with the legal aspect of this, getting the wording right, blah, 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 I'd love to work with you. They sent me an email about a week or two later saying, we got your email, we forwarded it to the relevant department, please reach out if you need anything else. It's a very perfunctory letter, but at least it's a step forward, so hopefully soon I might get word back from them, and I'll be starting to work with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. On that note, if you do sign the change.org petition, that would be lovely. If you sign it, a lot of people are donating money to the change.org petition, and that does make me really happy in the concept of it's showing that people are really getting behind this, and I like that. But all that donating money to the change.org petition does is buy views for the petition. And that's great, but that if you're in the mind to donate for this cause, don't donate to the change.org petition. Share the petition, share it on Reddit threads, share it in Discord communities that are allowed for it. Make your own YouTube video about the petition. Make a TikTok video about the petition. Make an Instagram video about the petition. Allow the fact that I'm producing videos to help it grow, because that's all those donations do. If you really want to donate to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, because the money that goes to them goes to fight this in a much more direct way, and to fight this sort of behavior on a much more broad scale, which is fight unfair practices in the digital space and the electronic space on a much more real level. And I think that's amazing. I'd also love to get another, YouTuber who's familiar with the law, particularly with patent law, involved in this. If I could get one of the big name YouTubers that's a lawyer involved in this, that would be great. I've reached out to some indie devs and some other people, and I'm waiting on responses from them to get more people involved with this. But please, at the very least, sign the petition. And like and subscribe to this video and watch more of my stuff. And I'm going to be putting out more and more stuff as this goes on. I also put out a lot of videos that aren't about Nintendo and Palworld, so check those ones out too. But thank you. Have a nice day. Goodbye.